Hi, everybody. It's my delight to be, Chuck, have a seat here, on stage with my friend Chuck Harrington, the CEO of Parsons Corporation, which is one of the world's foremost engineering and technology groups. And years and years ago, when I was a very young economic journalist roaming around the Middle East, I first got to know Parsons because you were the go-to guys for building truly complicated things like refineries and petrochemical plants. And so fast forward, under your leadership over the last 10 years or so at Parsons, you've invested massively in technology. So you're a leader in space, in smart infrastructure, in cybersecurity, missile defense, things like that. Now, we often lose sight when we look at some of the shiny gadgets, the kind of cool vehicles, et cetera, that are going to be on our streets in the future, that these semi-autonomous or autonomous vehicles, they need smart infrastructure. And that's right where you guys are the experts. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And one of the things I'm really excited about, and you will talk about, is that Parsons launched the Smart Cities Challenge to look at that last August. And
That's right.
you know, we are going to have a kind of Oscars-like moment at the end of our session where you're going to take out an envelope and read the names of the semifinalists. So tell us why smart infrastructure is important, Chuck.
Yeah, so let's go back to a little bit of that history. You know, the company was founded here in Southern California, actually in Los Angeles, city of Los Angeles in 1944. And in the 60s, we got our first city to build from scratch. It's a city in Saudi Arabia called Yanbu. And Yanbu is literally just desert. And so the whole idea was, how do we build a city to support an industrial complex and make it smart? So we actually started back then. It wasn't the technology we have today, clearly. But one of the things we did strategically about 8 years ago was sitting back and saying, how do we change the way infrastructure is delivered? Because we see this all over the world. You've got to roll out more infrastructure to serve more people, but once you roll it out, it's really expensive to maintain. And we're not seeing the same sort of gains that tech industry is seeing in what they can do with less. So the whole goal is, how do we think of infrastructure as being a network? Kind of like Elon Musk saying a car is a server on wheels. Well, if a car is a server on wheels, it needs to be supported by a network. So how do we come up with better, more disruptive solutions that can do more for less? That's really the goal.
Right. And so tell us a little bit about, you know, we talk a lot about smart cities. I mean, what does that really mean? And, you know, where are you delivering these solutions? And maybe focus a little bit on mobility, because I think mobility and transportation, that's where a lot of this comes together.
Yeah, so one of the companies we target for acquisition was a company out of Canada called Delcan. And it was originally a spinoff of TRW, and they developed a product called iNet, or for Intelligent Transportation Networks. And iNet's deployed about 60 cities around the world. And what it does is everything from, it obviously monitors the traffic. It dynamically changes this traffic lights where there's technology deployed to do that. It dynamically changes speeds on freeways. It dynamically changes tolls. It can, in some cities, like around Atlanta, they have lanes that are open for one direction at one time of day, and the other direction it'll manage all that. But it also deploys maintenance crews. So that knowledge is in the system. And the fact that it's knowing when it's going to change the light, you know, that's incredible data to help get goods and people through networks more efficiently. And you get goods and people through networks more efficiently, you are doing better things for the environment, you're spending less time waiting, and you have a safer streets and intersections.
What do we do about, you know, if I look at my city in Los Angeles, I think I have great admiration, for example, for the Department of Transportation here. I think they're, you know, technologically right up there, and they kind of get it. But in many municipalities, the public sector is kind of lagging behind you guys. And how do we kind of bring them up and get them to think more about the promise of smart infrastructure?
Well, that's part of this whole idea of the Smart Cities Challenge.
Yeah.
How do we come out with a radically different approach to doing something and offer a free one-year service? And you can decide at the end of the year if it's something you want to expand or not, but the goal is to do this without putting out huge capital outlays and use technology in really smart ways. And this is, of course, with our really incredible partners on this program, Amazon Web Services and Verizon and CoMotion, CoMotion, to really deliver this in a way that's less threatening. It's just a trial. See if it really does do the things we say it's going to do.
So I see. So you're not going to a city and saying, write us a $2 billion check for this very sophisticated system that you can't possibly understand. And
I think that approach is dead on arrival in every city.
But give us maybe an example, sort of a micro example of where you see this, the kind of value that you can deliver.
Well, in every network, it's always the crossroads of the network. It's the intersection that is really the pain points. So how do we, right now in most cities, there's standards around the world that says, and you have to go through and change those traffic lights at least once every 5 years. Well, think about Los Angeles or any city in around the world. What the changes that have been happening in the last 5 demographic changes, urbanization moves, growing populations, people's travel habits changing. If you're only changing the traffic signals once every 5 years, you're going to have basically traffic jams everywhere. So what we're looking to do is, without spending $2 billion up front, how can we do that for the same cost it's costing you now, but change them at least monthly, let's say, or something along that lines. When you're changing those traffic signals, you have less frustration, you have less distraction, you have fewer people in accidents, pedestrians, bicycles getting hit because people are so stressed out. You also have, some cars turn off at intersections when they're waiting, but not all, so you're producing more pollution. That's really the goal here.
Right. By the way, speaking of traffic congestion, I should say that Parsons is leading the work for the modernization of LAX. Now, of course, Los Angeles International has come in for some criticism the last few weeks with the sort of management of the kind of ride-sharing system. I'm not going to ask you to weigh in on that. But how big a challenge is that at LAX?
Well, and I'm not going to weigh in on the solutions or the issues, but one of the things we have to recognize, again, going to those changes, is the way we move from point A to point B has changed dramatically.
Right.
I know my wife and I, we don't get in our cars in the weekend. We're Ubering or Lyfting, or we're on Bird or Lime or one of the other various scooter options. There's so many more ways to move today than there were 5 years ago, and those are disrupting traditional infrastructure solutions. So everybody's trying to figure out, how do we change the fact that there may be more single passenger cars coming into the airport than there used to be in the past.
Right. Speaking about new ways of moving around, of course, one new way that's coming down the pike is the third dimension of mobility, which is in the sky in our cities. And in fact, in a few minutes, there's an expert session at the other side of CoMotion that is being managed by the city of it's private, unfortunately, but the city of Los Angeles and the World Economic Forum, looking at how to regulate urban airspace, which is a big, very complicated problem. Is that something Parsons is looking at?
That's definitely an area. We've been supporting the Federal Aviation Administration for 25, 30 years. And so what we're thinking, what has to come out is, in essence, a little FAA at almost every city to manage that airspace. One of the things I got to do, sought to see a demo of an autonomous flying vehicle. So I went over and to the founder of the company and said, "Can I ride in that?" And they go, "Well, with a certain amount of releases of everything," which I didn't tell my wife, I got to go on a 20-minute ride on an autonomous flying vehicle. And it was amazing. So it was just me. It was a two-seater, but there was nobody else in it. It was very lightweight. So when we think about something falling out of the sky, I mean, if you're underneath it, there's a problem, but the impact to your body is much less. So I think, as I envision the future of mobility, be it vertical or horizontal on the ground, I think we have to think differently in terms of the vehicles we have. They're going to be lighter weight, they're going to be electrically powered, the collision impacts are not going to be the same. Of course, there's going to be autonomous systems reducing the headway. That's engineering speak for the room between the vehicles. And it's just going to be a completely different world of how these operate. So whether it's an FAA for the city, it's thinking out the safety of what happens, as Elon Musk has said, if a hubcap falls off from a flying vehicle, well, it won't have hubcaps, but you get the point. There could be things. We have to really think through, what are their lanes of travel? How do they get from altitude down and back up without causing other accidents? But as someone once told me, you don't hit very many pets pedestrians or street lights if you're 30 feet above the ground.
No, and for sure, I think we're going to see level 5 autonomy in the skies way before we see it on the ground.
Our biggest challenge will be dealing with completely manual, partially autonomous, completely autonomous, and both flying and on the ground. That's the real challenge that we as providers of technology and cities and counties are going to have to deal with. It's the fact that we'll have all of them operating simultaneously.
Right. Who is sort of leading that in your view? I mean, is it the Americans, the Germans, the Chinese? Who's going to win that race?
You know, well, I'm not going to predict who's going to win the race, but I do think that I'm amazed at how progressive U.S. cities and counties have been, quite frankly. When you think about it, it's a little scary throwing out autonomous vehicles. You don't know how they're going to act in every single situation. But actually, the U.S. has been very progressive in this regard. I think our legal system and safety focus and all that will more than likely make us a little slower on adoption rates than some other areas. But I'm pretty confident a lot of that technology will come from the U.S.
Right, yes, I think that's true. So let's talk a little bit about the Smart Cities Challenge. And we're very happy to be part of it right from the beginning, and thank you, and I'm delighted to be one of the jurors. But one of the reasons I think we accepted is that you focus on smart intersections.
Correct.
And I think we forget just how critically important those nodes are in a city, and how important they are to sort of Vision Zero future of safety, et cetera. But talk a little bit about that and what technology can bring to that.
So one of the things I challenged our team with a few years ago is when you think of, you have a picnic, and of course invariably what shows up, the ants. They come from all directions. They cross each other. They merge. They don't ever have traffic jams. You know, they just do it seamlessly. And I said, if we could get traffic to move like lines of ants merging together, and in an autonomous system is theoretically possible, but pre-autonomous, fully autonomous systems, what are we going to do to make those intersections, one, safer, two, smoother, and less aggravating for us all? And so that was how the challenge kind of started at 30,000 feet. Now, with a lot of brilliant engineers and scientists, they obviously made a much more articulate solution than that one. But that's how it started.
Right. And how much does a robust 5G network, how important is that to smart intersections in the future?
Well, 5G networks change everything.
Yeah.
A fully robust, fully deployed 5G network is going to make the cost of transmitting and the ability to transmit data so much more effectively and so much more efficient. And so when we think of servers on wheels, and we think of all the cameras, smart lighting, smart signals that are ultimately being deployed over time, they're all generating tremendous amounts of data.
Right.
So to use that data for the benefit of the citizen, you know, that has to be come in and not just centrally analyzed, but it has to be distributed. It has to, the analysis has to happen at the edge. Yeah. So when we think of data, we think of first you get raw data, to which we provide analytics that converts that into information. Then we roll it through our algorithms that creates usable knowledge to change. You know, we call it actionable knowledge. That has to happen at the edge, and it has to happen at lightning fast speeds. Yeah. So all of that to get those main benefits that
and only 5G can deliver that.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, we haven't talked about one thing that's critically important, and that is security.
Yes.
Because I think we all have this sort of hidden worry that there is a bad hombre, as our president might say, somewhere who's going to hack into a system and turn lights red at an intersection when they should be green or vice versa. So Parsons, of course, is one of the great global leaders in cybersecurity. So this is something that I guess that you really do bring to the table, I imagine.
Yeah, so working with the intelligence community and the Defense Department as we do, what most citizens don't realize, we are in a global war today, and it's going on at lightning speeds as different countries and terrorist groups and just really smart people are constantly testing and pushing networks, and Lord knows what all their intentions are. But the more connected we are, the more at risk we are. And so the technology to protect these networks has got to be state-of-the-art and constantly changing. We think of the pace of change. I think of my phone, and I think back to when I was in college and had the rare opportunity to go see a Cray computer, and I think I carry a lot more capacity in my hip pocket than I saw in that Cray computer back when I was in college. And so all of that data being generated, some of which could be misused by the wrong folks, and if you want to cause a mess up in a city, it's how do you grind everything to a halt. So cyber protection will be key. It's going to have to be designed in and constantly updated.
Right, okay. So let's go back to the Smart Cities Challenge. And I know that when you announced it in August, I was really amazed by the number of submissions of cities from around the world who submitted proposals and dossiers on smart intersections. So let's talk about a little bit about that, and then let's pull out the envelope and with a drum roll announce the semifinalists.
Well, I think what it shows is that almost every city of a certain size around the world is struggling with the same problem.
Yeah.
And it's changing demographics, it's changing travel patterns, it's urbanization, it's just raw growth. And so it's a common pain in cities. And so when you see an opportunity to participate in a really cool challenge that's going to deploy some really cool technology, I think that was a lot of cities said, what do I got to lose? They're going to give it to me for free, and oh, by the way, it sounds really like it could make a big change.
Right.
And the solutions they're talking about don't require massive capital investments, increased taxes, increased fees up front, which I think is what is the secret sauce. And plus, as I said, having great partners like Amazon Web Services and Verizon just really make this all possible.
Yeah. What's not to like? Well, I would say let's look at that envelope.
Well, this is not like the old Johnny Carson, where it's, So, as I unseal the envelope and take a look at it, one of the things I guess I'd like to say first is when we think about this process, we had dozens of cities that submitted. We had a technical scoring program to get that down to the top 10. After we announced the top 10 cities today, which will be in no particular order other than alphabetic, there will be a process then where an independent panel and technical experts reach out to each city to refine and understand this particular challenge they're experiencing and whether or not the solution is viable for that particular challenge and if it's going to provide the solutions they want. So we expect to announce a winner by an independent panel with very august transportation experts and others like yourself who will be making the selection, and that should be in April of next year. So
that'll be exciting.
With no further ado, in alphabetical order, that's a silent drum.
Yeah.
Arundel County, Maryland.
Whoa.
Round of applause for Arundel. The city of Austin, Texas.
Oh, yes. And I think, actually, we have who is from Austin here? There we go. Okay. Good.
From an international, from the city of Dubai, the Roads and Transit Authority, United Arab Emirates.
From Dubai. Wow. The RTA, we know them well. Yeah.
The Frontier MPO in Fort Smith, Arkansas.
Whoa. Okay.
Another international entry, the city of Manama in the Kingdom of Bahrain.
Good.
Another foreign entry, the city of Mississauga in the province of Ontario, Canada.
Well, we like Canada.
Close to home here, the city of Pasadena, California.
Whoa!
Also not far from here, the city of Las Vegas, Nevada. Another California entry, Walnut Creek, California.
Whoa.
And last, and certainly not least, the city of Westminster, Colorado.
Well, those are all great choices, and I think that, certainly the Southwest and Southern California has done very well.
They have. And I think that shows just the popularity of the areas, the growth they're seeking, and quite frankly, the innovative solutions they're seeking. So
right.
Kudos to them.
Well, that's wonderful. So, the winner will be announced in April.
Yes.
That's terrific. And I mean, that'll be quite interesting from a business and commercial point of view, because that will throw a spotlight on a particular kind of solution in the future, right?
Yes. It's
And
interesting.
that could be scaled to other geographies.
There's so many people we've talked about who are so interested in this because they see it as a real issue, so from investors to other tech companies. And you're right, what we'll start with is one corridor. And every city's corridor is probably a little different. Some are longer, some are shorter. But if it works in a corridor, then you can scale to the entire city. If it works in the city, you can scale to the entire county. I mean, the scaling costs are fairly minimal once you get that first corridor in place.
Right.
And city, county, state, nation, globe, then it's the universe.
Right. Tell us maybe a minute or two about our friends in China. I noticed there weren't any Chinese cities on that list. One, why is that? Maybe we didn't get enough submissions.
Yeah, might just been the press and being able to get the information out to them right now. I don't have a good answer as to why not, but obviously they're very progressive in the way they're looking at their infrastructure challenges. And between China and India and a couple other cities around the globe, those are massive cities with the same challenges we have.
Yeah, I think sort of where I'm going with this is the Chinese approach to, let's say, smart intersections often will involve sort of optical recognition of license plates, facial recognition, things like this, which might be a little bit edgy area for us in the West.
Yes.
So is that a kind of division that you're looking at?
Well, we definitely don't want personally identifiable information. That's a goal of the data that we'll utilize. It's not really to understand who's where, it's just to understand where there's a vehicle and what speed is it moving and how long is it waiting.
Good. Chuck, I want to really thank you for taking the time to come to CoMotion today. I know from your busy schedule, it's so important the work you're doing in terms of making our infrastructure and our cities smarter in this very, very technologically complicated age. So
well, I very much appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks. Let's have a round of applause for Chuck.